Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. What's going on, everyone? Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Yes, happy Thursday. It's May 1st. Happy May. Happy May. Yeah. New month. And nearing the end of the week. So I hope that it's been a good one for you. Hope that we start to experience some of the May flowers post the April showers, even though I see some forecasts of rain still for May, but you know, hopefully all purifying and cleansing rains, which we welcome, we appreciate, so that the flowers can bloom, can bud, can grow. But yeah, I hope all is well with you is all that I'm really trying to say. However the flowers bloom for you, I hope that it's a lovely sight and a sweet fragrance in your life. We're going to see what the message is today and try to keep it short and sweet. All right, let's see. Oh, interesting. We got the Two of Swords, and I see the Lovers back here. What's this sticking up? Oh, okay. The Lovers and the Ace of Wands. All right, Lovers, Ace of Wands. But how did, I don't know. So I was tempted to keep it over there, kind of peeking up from the back of this Two of Swords, but I mean, I guess it doesn't matter too much. And then we got this. Let's see. So either somebody's blocking an opportunity, or an opportunity is being blocked, or there's two blocking actions here. And interestingly enough, we got a feminine energy. I'm gonna try to keep from shaking the table so much. We got a feminine energy, we got a masculine energy, and of course the same with the Lovers card. Oh shoot, what's under here? The World. I didn't even realize there was another card under here. That's kind of wild. The World card. 3 naked bodies. And a phallic. Yeah, I'll take that as you will. Like, is there something to that? But so we got the Two of Swords, which is kind of a blocking energy or a blocked energy, and then we got the Seven of Wands, which is also someone protecting their energy and blocking, I would say, like external influences, maybe opinions, intrusions, interruptions, temptations, could be that too. And this could even be a blocking attempt. This is interesting. And then with the Lovers and the World in the middle, the World being a completion card at that, Wands definitely being more of a new beginning. I don't know, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that it feels like, ooh, wow, okay. All right, so this is what I'm sensing. This feels like masculine and feminine energy. Let's just say it as if it's singular, you know, a man and a woman and a man, that in their own separate silos are being very cautious of temptations and distractions in their life, like almost, what's a good way to say it, like being very selective. That's what it is. And it may or may not be about each other, it just may be about attracting the right energy to themselves. Like, for instance, the female energy, the Ace of Wands, as it was kind of, now it's kind of funny to put it back the way that it was kind of like peeking up from over top of her head, you know what I mean? It's like a feminine energy could have all types of propositions that would even be tempting, or interesting, to say the least, that would maybe even be viable options for intimacy, let's say, or if we're not talking about that, just an opportunity in general that just looks really good, especially, let's say, like on paper, right? Like everything checks out. It just seems like a why not type of situation. Literally a thumbs up here with the Ace of Wands. But is it though, is the question. It could look good. It could even perhaps even feel good in this case, but it's given that there's someone here in the feminine seat that is very particular, or just, like not even remotely distracted by even things that look good or seem good, unless it truly is like a divine alignment, which the Ace of Wands we could thoughtfully consider might be. It's one of those cards that's like divine essence. But if anything, it's given that someone in this energy can't even be swayed or distracted or tempted by anything less than, and maybe even standards so high that even the Ace of Wands is a pause for, gives cause for pause. Like, you look good, you talking the talk, you talk a good game, you more or less doing all the right things, quote unquote, but this is like a time will tell response, not somebody that would be pardon me, that would be tempted to move impulsively just because something is tempting, or just because it appears to be a big opportunity, a big chance, a once in a lifetime situation, because appearances, as we know, can certainly be misleading, So I'm given that someone with their swords up and they're blindfolded is kind of like guarding the windows to their soul. That's what I'm sensing from it in this moment. So it's not so much that the person is blind in this energy, but it's just that they're particular. Like, if anything, I would step out and say that this is somebody seeing with their third eye, as a matter of fact, which definitely gives way to this Lover's energy here, where you're just perceiving life through a higher resonance than just your flesh, let's say, or your carnal instincts. So I'm loving that for the female force, very guarded in a sense, but I would say just has strong boundaries, and I would say deep insight with the sword energy, double swords at that. This is somebody that's definitely going to think twice before making a decision or a choice, not because they're uncertain of themselves, but because they would want to be careful and sure, as sure as they possibly can be. And again, that's definitely not just going to be swayed by appearances, or even a projection or projections of energy such as lust, such as temptation, or seduction, you know. Not to say that there's anything wrong with any of that in the right context, but this, again, is someone that's thoughtful to consider whether or not it actually is, you know. So I love that. I love that. And is and protecting her energy in that kind of way, you know. Again, as same with the masculine, from outside influences, from external influences, maybe even from internal influences if we're talking about lust. But the same could even be for the masculine. They might even, you know, be protecting themselves from their inner urges, you know, or their temptation to act impulsively, or to act out of, you know, carnal provocation, you know, like their carnal needs, or, you know, like what you know, you get what I'm saying. I'm just trying to make it fair since I spent so much time on the feminine, but I think the same can be translated for the masculine in his own right, you know, where it could be, you know, someone standing their ground on what they truly believe in, and on the standards that they've established for themselves, and not settling for less, you know, especially given, look at the disparity, right, which rings a bit true in life, you know, in real life, that we got the Ace of Wands, which is kind of like a singular distraction for the feminine, but we got the Six Wands up against this one. Not to say that they're necessarily phallics, you know, no tea, no shade. Maybe they are, I don't know, but I'm not saying that in this case. But really, if we count it as like temptation, a man could be far more tempted to be provoked in a carnal sense than a woman can be, because sometimes, you know, we could have all the propositions in the world, and it mean and good ones at that, and it mean absolutely nothing if our mind is just not in that zone, you know. Honestly, very, you know, transparently, this is funny that this is coming up, because I was literally thinking about my I've had a couple of stints of abstinence in my life. You know, I've had a 4-year run some years back, like coincidentally just a little bit before I met my son's dad. Not exactly right, you know, there was some gray area before that time, but, you know, definitely warmed up to him, if you get my drift. But I was like out of the game for 4 years before that. And then most recently, because sometimes, like, you know, I can kind of lose count, because I mean, who's really counting, like I said, when that's just not where your mind is, and it hasn't been like focused in that direction for a long time. And I can say transparently that it's been 6 years of abstinence for me, which seems like an eternity. I thought the first time I had taken a break in my life was like, whoa, that's a pretty long run. You know, you couldn't have told me I'd ever do that again in my life, or, you know, feel compelled to do so. But life has unfolded in an interesting way, where I've just found that there are just far more important things to focus on than, you know, sexual satisfaction, you know, not in a way that ultimately would distract me or deter me from lover's card, you know, achieving a supreme spiritual resonance, and more or less kind of sanctifying myself. And this is not religious at all, trust me. It's not like a religious abstinence or celibacy per se. It's really just a matter of personal preference and focus, that the deeper I, you know, focused in on myself and my son, and what it means to just be like a hole in this season of my life, the less it seemed, the less there seemed to be any particular temptation. Not that there weren't any, but any particular temptation or proposition worth sacrificing that sanctity. You know what I mean? Like there were no lovers options per se that evolved, or what's the right word? Not advanced, but developed. That's the right word. There was definitely a lover's option that could have got it. But there wasn't time to fully develop, the foundation that would have, made that opportunity viable for either one of us, honestly. And gratefully so for the both of us, because I feel like there was some learning and growing that needed to happen for us individually, especially at the point of where I was at a particular time. I think if I had kind of given way to that temptation, finding this particular person very worthy to give way to, mind you, like definitely Ace of Wands energy, it kind of would have stunted my growth throughout the rest of the process of my evolution, so to speak, and his too, in a lot of ways that I couldn't speak on personally, of course. But it's interesting that this is coming out, because I literally was sitting here thinking that it's been that long for me where I kind of, like I was talking about in the last message, how I kind of cut off cold turkey, like, nope, like I was only at one point in time engaged in one gentleman, which I was taking seriously for a second, like seriously enough, but not seriously enough that I felt like when I felt that nudge that I needed to kind of like, I hate to use words like sanctify or purify, because it wasn't in a sense where it was like, oh, this is my devotion unto God per se. It was in a sense, but that's not where my head was. It was really unto my supreme self and what I felt I was being called to answer to, and it wasn't like I felt like you couldn't have sex and do that also. But for me, or that I feel like in general, there's no space for sensual pleasure or sexual pleasure and also purpose, because I absolutely do, especially when we're talking about the lovers, definitely. But at the time, I had to be real, just like if you tuned into my last message about smoking weed, as to what value I was really gaining from my energetic exchange, really and truly. What was I really earning? Was this even a situation that was on a lover's trajectory? When I was clear about that and honest, when I felt sure about that answer, I had to then respond accordingly. And then it became a two of swords situation where it was like, you know what? And it was right around Lent time. Like it was right after Lent had started. It wasn't quite Easter yet. So that's how I always know kind of when the last time was. And coincidentally, the one that I'm talking about that was the Ace of Wands, that, whatever, we just both needed to grow. I met him when I had already kind of made that devotion and commitment solid to myself, like after an old boy from before was long past, and I was kind of deep in that commitment to myself, that's just not where my head was. But I could have been persuaded under different circumstances. I'm just glad that there was a mutual respect there where I wasn't, and then circumstances took a turn that neither one of us were in a place to align that way, So anyway, a long story short, what I'm seeing here, that just triggered me to say that. I don't know if that resonates with anybody. Definitely, perhaps if you need any encouragement on your abstinence or celibacy journey, cheers to you, because I know it may not be something that is easy, or if you're feeling inclined to start one, man or woman, because this is given the sense that both are in a position of self-control, and preservation in a strong and definite way. So men be on that too these days, what they call it, retention. Of course, we ladies, we lead the charge, spiritually and energetically, as we always do, but it has great value for a masculine and a feminine to, preserve self for self. And, just be sure that you're giving yourself your all, and that you are, that you're giving as much of your time and energy that is needed and required to ascend yourself to a position where your vibration alone is more attractive to what you truly resonate with, and sometimes it takes meeting somebody to kind of inspire, as the Ace of Wands does, that decision, good, bad, or indifferent. I can't say that the person that caught the cutoff was necessarily a bad influence, but he wasn't an overwhelmingly convincing one either. Like, no, this is something that I gotta have. Case in point, we didn't last much longer after that aspect fell off, which is understandable, because guys that are not on that, it's hard to really get a person to understand that sense of rejection that they didn't experience before. It doesn't really make sense, which is why, is probably why I felt called spiritually to do it, so that the connection was purified enough for my perspective to be pure, and for his as well, because clearly a physical connection, was definitely paramount, or else we might still be kicking it to this day, but we were not. We are not. So, I said that to say that if that's what you feel called to, maybe this is your sign, or if you feel like, or for some with the World card here, maybe you have been operating on that vibe, and the World card might be putting that to an end. Maybe it's the end of having to feel so guarded, so detached, so defensive, about opportunities that literally arise. You see what I did there? That arise at this point, because you are in an elevated mind space, spiritual space, not to say that means absolute green light to a sexual connection, but to intimacy overall, because sometimes, particularly from a woman's perspective, as I was saying, when we're kind of like shut down on that aspect, especially when you have the experience of setting a boundary such as abstinence and it not necessarily being received holistically by whom you set it with, you kind of grow a bit of a callous to any intimacy at all. Number one, to protect yourself, but also to protect whomever might be disappointed by your apprehension to engage in a physical way, So it kind of, like I said, when you ain't on that, you ain't on that. And it could be a golden phallic presented to you in a glass case, and you'll be like, I'm good on that. I'm good right now. But once you come to a point where, I think as the horns are blowing, I think though, like I think that glass case, so to speak, is broken around you or around it or whatever we're talking about, when you get to a point where what you're attracting is the real deal. like that's what kind of ends the cycle and begins the new one, you know, where you don't have any choice. Well, of course you have a choice, but what's in front of you is so extremely stimulating, and I don't even know what word to use, like captivating maybe, in all the best ways, because it meets you where you are in the present moment. It's not captivating in the ways of who you were in a lower frequency, or in a previous season, in a less mature, less evolved mind state, or in an energy that was less self-controlled and more indulgent. It doesn't necessarily appeal to that, like, oh, I just gotta lay down with this person. It actually appeals to the higher sensitivity of you on a spiritual resonance that is maybe perhaps more whole, you know, and recognizing that characteristic and quality in someone else is what breaks the glass. You know what I mean? Like I said, it could be golden and beautiful, but for a woman, if it and almost close to heavenly, as the Ace of Wands is, and for a man, it could be plentiful, you know, a variety of options and choices, and it still not be that one that is most appealing. Like for guys, there could be an exhaustion with spreading yourself thin, or you know, kind of like giving yourself, your energy away to others in ways that aren't even really holistically satisfying. Like it's good for immediate gratification, but it's not long lasting, you know. So each side, each polarity, duality, whatever, has their thing, their hang up, you know, so to speak. But like I said, it could be close to it, it could be everything under the sun, and still not be the one. Bars, you know. And I think when you get to that point of maturity, when you're recognizing like where your standards truly are, or where you wish to elevate them even, or whatever you aspire to be, and certainly when you feel like you've arrived at a certain level, that is that affirming point of self-awareness to perhaps allow yourself to be open to what presents itself at that point, you know, where you, at that point, you wouldn't settle for anything that's close but no cigar. You wouldn't settle for something that's just good for right now or good for the night, because you've elevated your standards so high that it wouldn't even feel worth it to you, you know. So that's what I'm getting here, is that this is like a good projection, I would say, for some powerful unions to come online, or maybe even to elevate together, you know, maybe going to a next level at this point, if there has been some apprehension or been some defensiveness, some caution, you know, some extreme carefulness and deep consideration, you know. This is either a sign of what is possibly already in front of you, or perhaps what's soon to come, because for all intents and purposes, some really significant cycles have been closed. I would say, with this card hidden like it was here and I didn't even see it, some cycles have been closed that maybe neither one has really realized yet, you know. Clearly, you know, coming to an understanding of just how transcendent their presence has become in a spiritual and natural sense. And maybe there gets to be an encounter to reflect exactly the truth of that resonance, Or like I said, there's an encounter in process as we speak, where somebody might still kind of be operating as if they need to be on guard or in rejection mode, and somebody might still be in a position where, they feel protective about opening themselves up again in any regard on either side. Not really sure, because you've kind of been in defense mode for so long, if it's safe to actually let the guard down a bit. And it seems to me, with this centrical force in the middle, that it's looking pretty safe out here. It's looking pretty safe out here, given the maturity, and I'll say wisdom, that has been gained from experiences. Like I was saying, like kind of allowing yourself to like submitting yourself to that process of evolving, in a mature way, that most times can only really fully happen in solitude most of the time, especially if you have the option. Now, some people don't have the option to grow and on their own accord. They could already be coupled or married or whatever the case may be. But when you have the option to just be with yourself and focus on yourself, that's when some real growing, if that's the focus, can take place. And oh goodness. And 9 times, that was a car backfire. And 9 times out of 10, when you acknowledge that is the path that you wish to embark upon, as I did, in that season of my life, those that aren't on that or can't support it or are not aligned to travel with you, most likely will fall off or detour onto their own path somewhere else, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. So if there's any fear about that, or any regret or remorse, nothing happens for no reason. I guess I should say everything happens for a reason. And you'll be a better woman or a man for it, or you probably already are, depending on who I'm talking to. Which means that with that frequency of ascension, you can only be an attractive force for somebody that matches it, and that's what we want. We don't want to be supplementing or substituting for where there are voids and deficiencies anymore, making up for what's missing, given more than what's being received. Like, it's the end of that game for healthy commitments and relationships, partnerships, unions of every sort, platonic, romantic, intimate, creative, professional. It's the season of equilibrium now, equality and harmony and balance. So, a sure sign of how you resonating is what you're attracting at this time. And more importantly, what you receive of what you're attracting, because if it ain't what the vibes that you're putting out, then you already know that, that's not the thing to settle for, but I feel like that beginning message is a depiction of two people that are very much operating in a supreme resonance and very intentional about it, and aware of it. And so therefore you can keep your eyes peeled for what that attracts, for sure. And I don't really think you can miss it any more than it can miss you. I just think that sometimes when you've been in your own little silo, you don't always know when it's safe to break that glass, like, especially not on sight. It takes there's some security clearances, which I guess isn't a bad thing, but there's some security clearances that have to be, what do you call it, like checked or whatever, you know, I don't know, I guess checked is the word, before you feel you comfortable to let your guard down, you know. Ooh, not the Empress, child. Well, we know she's the most secure queen in the deck, like literally. My goodness. No worries whatsoever. She got the whole kingdom on her side. Hopefully, a good Empress would, anyway. God save the queen. Got the whole nation in prayer for her. That's deep. Oh, that just popped out. The Two of Swords. Well, that's the protectiveness. There it is, yet again. That's the security. So she's got her own internal built-in security. Oh, man, that's funny. I think I might do this here. I'm going to try to get out of here fast since I did a lot of talking. So that's what we got with the Empress. She's still, well, let's just say she's highly guarded and protected, whether it's her doing or otherwise. But of course, that resonates with the energy that I just read it as, which is personally being defensive. But that's why, though, because the Empress has, what was the card that came out first? Oh, it was just the Two of Swords. But this is what's being protected. You know, this supreme position of accomplishment, of esteem, responsibility, legacy, you know, like so much seemingly to secure, that's connected to the Empress, that's like not just about her. So that's the cause for the defensiveness, you know, if there is any. So it's justified, it's righteous, I was trying to say rightful, but righteous too, perhaps, I suppose. And it's understandable. There's a lot at stake when you're in the Empress position that you wouldn't want to, especially when we're talking about wisdom that's been gained through experience that ultimately becomes transmuted as self-esteem. Like, that's one of the main reasons why women stay in their silo and stay defensive and protective, because the last thing you want is to be knocked off the pedestal that you built for yourself, you know, because nobody else was going to really build it for you. When we think about it, as a woman, usually, that you had to build all your own and secure all your own, making one false move, you know, one lustful decision, one night stand, you know what I mean? It's like you weigh everything double time, because and then the Empress is also a mom, so especially if you're a mom and you have your wellness is affect, you know, your children's wellness depends on your wellness, is what I'm trying to get out. There's just so much more to think about. And even if you're not a mom, just your creativity, you know, your ability to just bring things to life, to build, to manifest. We need our minds to be at peace, and we need our full sense of security to manifest the most ideal creative circumstances. You know, we make do when we're not fully ourselves, or when we're injured or bruised or battered, we make do and we survive, but at this time, like, we want to be operating in our whole selves and not really surrendering to anything that's not willing to assist that, support that, and appreciate that. So it's understandable. And if you don't feel like you have attracted that level of reciprocation, then it's absolutely a cause to stay grounded and to stay, well, yeah, stay grounded, but to stay guarded, you know. And if there's anything in your life that isn't operating in that frequency, then there's absolutely cause for there to be a release of it or you from it. Hell yeah. With no apologies. Look at that, the Magician. Now, what is this Magician that we talking about? Okay. I was about to say, we talking about manifestation or manipulation. That was going to be my question, but I like the looks of this. I do. We all know, well, maybe you don't, but how I feels about the King of Wands. He's my favorite king. You know, so this is somebody that is self-controlled, that has evolved. Oh, consider the masculine energy came off of the Seven of Wands, where he was not necessarily of any nobility, you know, from that depiction, but positioned himself to establish, it's so loud out there today. He's positioned himself to establish a supreme sense of security that may have been challenged at some point in time, certainly tempted, you know. But I love the Magician here with the King of Wands. That's double creativity, but not just like kinetic creativity. This is like something mystical and magical here, where somebody can literally like pull a rabbit out of a hat if they need to, like make a way out of no way type of energy. Very resourceful, very innovative, but again, mature, wise, intentional, direct with their creativity, you know, direct with their wand, like knowing, being aware and responsible for the force that they wield. And this could be in a sexual sense. This could literally be somebody, because the Empress is definitely highly attractive, very beautiful. You know, there's just a certain quality to the Empress that is desirable, you know. The King of Wands, same in his own right, but this could even be someone that is extremely magnetic in ways that, you know, kind of like can almost attract obsession, is what I'm getting with the Magician and the King of Wands. Like somebody that if they wanted to use their powers for bad, they could, and most women would let them. Like that type of energy, you know, like where it wouldn't even be like necessarily diabolical. It's just like you know what you're dealing with and you let it fly anyway, because it's just that hypnotizing or that seductive of an energy that somebody has, or qualities that somebody has. But for me, it's saying that this is somebody that has all of that, you know, all of that character, all of that quality in their arsenal, literally attractive in every way you could think of, but again is selective and responsible and maybe even tempered, you know, definitely self-controlled. But there's another word that I want to use, like self-controlled, tempered, responsible. There's something else on my tongue that I can't get off. But yeah, you know, and what's he looking at? The Two of Swords. I love this. This is hilarious. Maybe considering how he could perhaps inspire her to let those walls, let that guard down a little bit. creative ways to connect, perhaps, But what I love about this, though, the King of Wands, this being the energy, is that in an upright fashion with the Magician, it's somebody that definitely has a strong determination and will, and a little hint to perfectionism too, as well, with the Magician, and a little bit of a little genius, not little, like um to what's the word, to diminish it, but not maybe witty, or just what's the word that I'm trying to find, like, I don't mean to say little, but I didn't want it to seem like somebody that's looking to kind of play games, or do something, again, manipulative, but just has like a wit about them, or I can't think of the word, but anyway, it's like whatever they set their sights on, they will invest themselves fully into achieving it, acquiring it, conquering it, whatever the challenge is. This is an energy that will definitely step into it accordingly and responsibly, is what I'm getting. So seeing someone that's a little bit guarded is even more perhaps of an allure and a challenge to their senses, because not because it's a hard to get type of energy per se, but because there's something that intrigues an energy such as this so much that it compels them to want to rise to the occasion. Not just frivolously, like, oh, I just got to get it because I can't have it. No, it's like, nah, I see something there. Like, this is somebody looking at someone as an empress, like the mother of their kids, a partner, and even a little bit on that pedestal, as I said, because this is a king, this is the empress, this ain't the emperor. But I feel like it's somebody that puts somebody on a pedestal, or the feminine energy in general, that might really value women as precious beings, so much so. And maybe it took them some time to get there. I'm not saying that was innate, or even learned behavior or conditioned behavior, because it's not in our society usually. It's evolved behavior and mentality. And this gives someone that did the work in their own silo, once again, to achieve this level of maturity and perspective, to have a reverence for feminine energy in a way that is respectful, that is honorable. And that is the great example of what it looks like to be, and that has boundaries. Let's say it like that. Like, this is someone that not only sees what they like, but they also appreciate that this is a woman that is not going to allow themselves to be completely walked over and messed over, and is not going to necessarily bust it open on the first night per se, just because the chemistry is there, and the connection is electric. You know what I mean? Like, it could be electric on both sides, and this is someone that would have the self-control to kind of bide their time and wait for an opportunity, or create a safe space for this connection to bloom. And this is someone that's going to take care of herself until that sign of security in an outward connecting force presents itself. So it's literally like the Lover's card, like a match made in heaven to some degree. Because what the Magician gives me is that, although I miss this, so pardon me, King of Wands, because although he may be looking at her like the Empress, the King of Wands is giving magician vibes. So like I said, he's no regular run-of-the-mill old king either. this is somebody that is supremely like alchemical, you know, like I said, that can manifest a mansion out of a molehill, you know. So definitely, like I said, not to be diminished at all, but I love in this case how the perspectives of each are coming through in a certain, particularly the perspective of the King of Wands, who's directly looking over in that direction. It just feels pure, you know. It feels palpable, if that's the word that I want. Like it's something really sparky, you know, about this energy here, that I love. I really do love. I like it a lot. Yeah. So let me get 2 more cards. I'm gonna just, because you know how it is. You know, when you getting a good read, you almost want to leave it there. But I'll give a little love to this space here and close it down. Can I do it in 10? I hope so. I could stay in this energy, whoop, the Hermit, and I'm leaving it up, right, because I knocked it over. But I could stay in this energy forever. Like forever. And the only thing that could potentially be, I don't know if you saw it, but it flipped out that way, that could potentially be a struggle about this again, is the consideration, you know, to be single or not to be single. That is the question, because the Hermit, of course, gives very much like solitude vibes, and thoughtful about, you know, even though there may be a desire to co-create, procreate, socialize, spark intimacy, proposition, date, become exclusive, maybe get married, like whatever the thing is that's in consideration here for a next level, it's no small thing, you know. So it could be that the Hermit was coming in kind of in a struggle with someone, maybe both sides, still in consideration about their readiness, their preparedness for whatever this next level of a challenge might be, like what it would bring, what there is to look forward to, and also like how you'll step into it, you know, like almost wanting to be in perfect alignment for a perfect quote unquote opportunity, as if there is such a thing, right? But that's what the Virgo gives, like always kind of wanting to be prepared for the best and the worst as much as they possibly can be before they subject themselves to the experience, almost because it just feels comfortable and secure to do that, you know. But there's not really any particular way that one can prepare themselves for love, you know, especially not one of a high frequency and resonance. When we're talking about the Lovers, where two people have more or less waited their whole lives for this, you know, literally have allowed themselves individually the time and consideration to grow and mature, to become the best potential candidate that they would like to see of themselves, you know, before they even consider, you know, what could couple with that. You know, that's what the Lovers gives, like somebody that's so committed to being the best that they can be first and foremost, that it just inevitably attracts that frequency. And as I said, these are people that haven't quite recognized their transcendence holistically. Maybe they see some tracks, you know, some traces of how they've grown, some tracks from the past, some, you know, considerable evidence of maturation, you know what I mean? Perhaps even just in what they are resistant to and guarded from. more than anything. But this is still the question for some about what they are actually ready for, because that's two different things. You know what you don't want. You know what you're, and it's funny because I've been given a lot of sidebars about myself today, but I feel very vulnerable to share. But I was in therapy this week, and that was one thing that came up, is that my therapist noticed from a question that was posed that many times I'm very clear about what something isn't, or what I don't want it to be, or what, I don't recognize it to be. But I'm not always 100% clear on what it is. And particularly, to be even more transparent, it was in reference to what I want. It's like, what you don't want and you're clear on that, but what about what you do want? And it was such a like, because I think I'm so clear to myself, but in that reflective moment, I had to consider that maybe even unto the universe, I haven't been very clear, so I've, even knowing in my heart and my soul and my spirit what it is that I desire, sometimes, it matters to verbalize it, or to be very intentional about what you're expectant to attract, to kind of help the universe help you type of thing. So again, this is just that energy of questioning whether or not, like, all the kinks, no pun intended, have been worked out of someone's aura to truly present them to be in an open and available position for intimacy, for love, for creativity, for whatever it is that we're even talking about. All right, one more. Make it good, Spirit, because the Hermit is nice. I could leave it there. Why? You saw that, right? And there's the answer. Masculine or feminine, because as I often say, I used to think that this was a female on this horse. But when I read the book, I realized it's actually supposed to be a man. So now to me, it's like, it's just, androgynous or ambiguous, which people say tarot is anyway. There's no gender in tarot. Well, there's a queen, there's a king, there's an emperor, there's an empress. So I don't know about that. There's masculine and feminine energy in the universe, so it's well represented in the cards, and depending on how it comes up, I speak to it. So I'm not that reader, just so you know. But in this case in point, this message, which was very much so black and white, but this is a great card. This is success in whatever the endeavor is. Whatever we're talking about here, like, this is an affirmation, a confirmation card, which could transmute and translate or transfer to whomever may be in the market for it, as a personal affirmation of just how successful and how evolved you already are. Just to have the mentality, the determination, the intention to want to be the best that you can be for yourself, not because you want to catch an XYZ type of man or a woman, not because you want to look a certain type of way, or want to put on airs a certain type of way, but like truly deep inside of you, like, this is internal energy here, want to be well, do well, and have wellness resonate through your life. That's already a successful energy. That's already winning, because like I said, if you already risen your standards to that level, then most likely that's what you're going to attract, or you're going to be discerning enough to know when something that presents itself isn't a match or isn't in alignment with that. No matter how engaging, intriguing, tempting, tantalizing, like no matter what it looks like or presents itself to be, or what it might even evoke within you, you'll always be measuring yourselves by that standard, and not settle in for, well, I won't say always. We have our moments, right? But you'll more or less, if it's solid, what you've established for yourself truly is solid, it's a firm foundation, then it'll really be hard to be knocked off of that. Like I said, that pedestal that you have, you've built for yourself, that you've established for yourself, because it's not dependent on anything outside of you. It's not, it doesn't defer, to any external influence, as we started this off in the very beginning, right? Yeah, there's nothing that could tempt you. What was that? Ooh, look at that. There's nothing that could tempt you. It's like no, I'm good. Something that could be presenting itself to be from the divine, how we started this with the Ace of Wands. That like, no, not even in comparison to what you may have had in the past or what else is out there, something that kind of looks like something good, you'll just know innately having established a certain spiritual or just energetic standard, that if this ain't really the Ace of Cups, because that's what this is giving way to, like that pure love, unconditional love, like not just something that looks like it or tastes good, at first, but has a bad aftertaste. That's what I'm getting. Or something that is good for right now, or, for the short term, and you're in for a long-term investment, you won't even be swayed by it. With its best presentation, you'll see exactly what it is for what it is, and that's great. That's resonance, and exactly what it is, and what it yields. What's behind that mask? Like, wow, you'll know, you'll see, you will discern with all this cup energy. Those that haven't done the work, quote unquote, as we say, that haven't allowed themselves to be processed into, and it's like I said, it could even be by way of experiences, maybe not in solitude or whatever the case may be, but where there's been no submission to that processing of evolution and maturity, or however you want to see it. I don't want to sound too judgmental as if it has to look like one thing, but you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't submitted yourself to some processing of your personal standards, more or less provoked by what you're attracting. So observing the dissonance between what you desire and what you either have or have attracted, and deciding that the change and transformation to raise that resonance and that frequency starts with you. It's not an external thing at all. It's for you to go within and to assess, redefine, and realign your core value and work from the inside out. If nobody else comes a knocking or a running or proposing or propositioning, that's the key for self. And when you value that in a paramount way, like I said, that's the winning energy. This is the frequency, first off, of those that don't see any benefit to that. They continue to distract themselves with their own lustfulness or immediate gratifications or ego, or dependencies, codependencies, insecurities, like all of those things that go unchecked and unresolved are what lead to a long-term resonance of this. Unhappiness, dejection, missed opportunities, codependency, the very opposite of the lovers, dare I point out, toxicity, and just ultimately unhappiness, like utter unhappiness, maybe even grief for time that's been lost and misinvested, But again, on a higher note, this is what you can recognize in certain offers and propositions before it even has to materialize right up under the magician, when you have submitted yourself to a standard that ultimately is measured by divine ordinance, supreme ordinance. So if that's you, then you ain't got nothing to worry about. You ain't got to worry about the devils behind the mask, the sinister spirits in the shadows, the narcs in in disguise, because you'll feel it, you'll sense it, you'll smell it, you'll see it in the activity and the evidence that's shown. It won't settle with your spiritual senses, like it'll be a disturbance in your soul, or a sense of feeling like you can't put your guard down or can't quite trust. And because you've evolved in a mature way to listen to those sensations, you don't ever have to really be worried about falling victim to them again. If that was the thought of finding yourself in a victimized state of energetic exchange, this to me is a sign and a confirmation that if you have established a trust within yourself first and foremost, you can really trust yourself with anyone, because you'll know who's worthy to be trusted with, and you'll react and respond accordingly. So I'm gonna leave that there, and I still went a little bit over, but I felt like I needed to get all of that out that was important, because for sure we know that the shade is out there. The darkness is just as prevalent as the light in some ways, maybe more so at times, but it's no match for your light. It's no match. It's no match, and it knows it. So the only thing that it can do is to try to trick you out of openness or an expectation of good things to come your way before they even arrive, or as they arrive, to make you question what's even good anymore, as if there couldn't possibly be, to absorb that frequency of light for itself as force fuel for its own agenda, whatever it is that we're even talking about here. Certainly not an entity with horns, but that adverse energy that just might not really want to see you and your brilliance winning, in healthy relationships, feeling good about yourself, creating quality things, raising your children to be loving beings, did I say confident, and open to the adventures of life, and curious about what's to come, and optimistic, and and still somehow grounded and self-aware. There's always going to be an opposing force against that really just wants that energy for themselves, and doesn't understand, or is not willing to go through the processing to obtain it for themselves or create it for themselves. But that's neither here nor there as far as those that are willing are concerned. Just keep on winning, facing forward, and looking forward to the absolute best to meet you exactly where you are. Congratulations. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I'll leave you with Peace.